as they come up, because I'm absolutely delighted to have these three amazing speakers with me today. And what I say, I was just talking before that I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan of actually each individual and what they do personally as people, but also what they do as the companies, because they are astounding at what they do. Now, this, of course, can become problematic because we're all British, and you might think, oh no, he's now, he's gone too far, and they're not. But they literally are that good. I'm not being American about it. They literally are that good. They're all amazing in their own right. So I'm very, very proud of it. And I'm also very proud of what Your Flock's managed to do, not only to attract these level of speakers, but I also know that a couple of them, in fact, actually, I think all three have looked at Your Flock and used it a little bit, and some of them are even using it for their companies as well. So, and by the way, that wasn't the reason why they're on the call. It's just a happy coincidence. They're on the call because they're amazing and experts in their own field around employment and employee branding and marketing, and that's the importance of it and company culture. But they also happen to use Your Flock for some of it. There you go. So Your Flock, what do we do? We're team intelligence, I suppose. We look at team dynamics, team engagement. We are an employee engagement survey tool. The real thing for me is the reason why I invested in it 5 years ago is because I want to help 1 million people be happier at work. That's my purpose. That's my passion. It also happens that Michal Wisniewski, who's also on the call, is my co-founder, who's the brains behind Your Flock, did all the clever stuff. And I basically just taken over hosting today because I'm just a massive fan of these three. So I just took over. You should be doing the hosting, but I just took over. But anyway, that's a different thing. So I invested in the company a bit ago, 5 years ago, and I've seen it grow with more and more people on it. As I say, our mission is to help as many people as possible become better, helping their teams, and usually through values. So I promised that I wouldn't wax on lyrical. Everyone who's on the call, I think, knows about Your Flock and what it can do. If you don't, please find out more about Your Flock at www.yourflock.co.uk and then talk to Michal and other people and get a demo. It takes like 15 minutes to show what the power of this stuff is. And if you do it for a couple of months, I mean, literally the stats that are coming out at the moment, we just got some stuff back from, I can't talk about an NDA, damn it, but I can talk about the other one. So IMD solicitors came back and we have improved decreased their employee turnover by about 27%, which is about a quarter, which you might not think is very exciting, but it saved them about £121,000 this year. Not only that, and I think this is, for me, the more important thing is, it's made the place a nicer place to work, and they're now winning awards for their culture, and people are loving staying with their company. And I think if you can make the world of work a better place, then I think you can make the world a better place. And that's what I'm all about. Now, of course, if you've got a CFO or a boss, you might want to tell them about the fact it saves you hundreds of thousands of pounds, because that might be the reason they want to use it. But for me personally, it's making the world a better place anyway. And which is, of course, what these three women do. Haha, there you go. There's a segue into, there you go. That was brilliant, wasn't it? But that's actually also very true. In their own rights, they do loads and loads of different stuff. I've said I won't introduce them because I know they're powerful and brilliant and do it themselves. So I'm going to go over to them, and as I promised you, it will literally be whoever's first on my left. So I'm going to say, Sarah, you're first. Introduce yourself and your wonderfulness to the crowd.
Hello, everybody. I am Sarah Knight. I was going to start with a Cilla Black type introduction, but then I figured I'm probably older than most people that actually remember Surprise, Surprise or Blind Date. I have a company called Mind the Gap Business Academy, and it's effectively about people. So I'm what's known, it's a title I've heard recently, which I'm totally using everywhere now because I think it's brilliant, a fractional people director, which makes me sound really, really important. But basically it means that I come into businesses and I help you look after your people, whether it's culture, well-being, leadership, training and development, all about developing and building emotional intelligence. So not interested in the hard skills, don't want to get involved in that shizzle. It's all about how they're behaving and their actions and impacts of that behavior.
Awesome. I'm so excited by it. I forgot to go off mute then. I'm going to go for Sophie next. Sophie, over to you.
Thank you, Dan. Hi, everyone. I'm Sophie. I'm the co-director of The Joyful, which is a brand and marketing agency for movers, shakers and change makers. And I would describe myself as a brand impact consultant specializing in communication. And we basically grow businesses who are dedicated to making a positive impact in the world via people, planet, and also profit. Because as we'll find out today, when you look after people and you look after the planet, profit absolutely comes as a natural natural impact of that.
You see, I told you, they're a dream team. They're a dream team of lovely people doing amazing things. And last but by absolutely no means least, I'm going to go, Gemma, introduce yourself and your amazingness.
Sarah, I know who Cilla Black is, by the way. As a Scouser, I need to know this. So I'm invested in blind dates. Let's just do that, shall we? But no, hi everyone, I'm Gemma. I am the Culture and Learning Director at a business called the Mapped Group. So Mapped Group, we invest in law firms. So we buy and build and help law firms to unleash all the brilliant stuff that they do and help them to make a positive difference. So I look after learning and culture. We've got a huge learning culture and helping people to sort of stretch and grow their capability across businesses. But yeah, to make sure businesses are a pretty awesome place to work for their people.
Can't argue with that as well, and the transformation that they have done is astounding in at least two of the businesses that you take. I think you might even be, anyway, again, that's an NDA. I've just realized I'm not selling more. You're all brilliant is what I was trying to say. I just can't do the future brilliantness because that might break some rules about what we do at your flock, so I won't. But congratulations to all of you for being amazing. I'm going to start off with a real kind of, I say basic question, but it's not really, it's quite important. And I know often we kind of start off with the who in these things, like, we know it's marketing and the importance of employee brand, but really if we can kind of take a step back and say, what does employee brand mean to you? And I was tempted because of Sophie's brilliant introduction, so I'm going to go with Sarah first on this one. So Sarah, what does employee brand mean to you?
Well, I think it's one of those words, a bit like culture, that is bounded about in every single blinking organisation that you ever hear bounded about in these days. And the first job is to understand to every individual what it means to them, rather than just what it means to me as well. So that's the first thing. But I think it is ultimately about action. It's about action, it's about impact, it's about learning, it's a two-way process. And ultimately, it's about the behaviours of the organisation. It's the how the organisation treats, behaves, and learns and lives with its employees.
You're on mute, Dan.
I just presumed that then someone was going to instantly take over because it's such a wonderful thing to say. I said, but Sophie will just take over and just flow from this moment.
Right, okay.
Well, I can
Sophie,
do actually, because I completely agree. And do you know, the first thing that came to my head, which might not be appropriate, was don't be a dick. And
I love that. Oh, good, we're swearing.
And that sounds like really obvious, but actually, if you look around at the problems that we have in the world, pretty much every single one of them can be traced back to business. And business is the problem, and therefore it must also be the solution. So for me, employee brand is the same thing as every single thing that a business does. And it's all about what your values are and how you live to those values, how in integrity you are with the whole of those values. And similar to what you were saying, Sarah, it's also about listening and understanding every single individual within your organization and ensuring that every single one of them realizes how important they are, no matter where they are on whatever hierarchy you've created for your organization.
I love it. And I think we are allowed to swear. This, of course, will be slightly edited as well, as we later on it'll be edited. So if you can not say fuck or bugger, that'll be awesome. And now I've now made my life a lot harder by having to now edit that out. That's ridiculous. Anyway, sorry. So I'm going to go really quickly on to, because I think that's a great point about employee brand. But I'm going to go for Gemma on this one. We say, look, because you work in employee brand, you've got an amazing employee brand with the maps and all the rest of these things. So why is it so important? Why should we be having this conversation? I'm going to go for Gemma first on this.
Yeah, I think, again, I agree with both what Sarah and Sophie have said, really. And I think with things like, again, employer brand seems to be a bit of a buzzword, isn't it? And everyone's talking about it. And I think the first thing is we shouldn't be trying to overcomplicate these things. It's quite simple, really. Do you give your people a shit hot experience? Mm-hmm. If you do, there's your brand, and it's about doing the right thing in the first place. That's what's really key here with these things. So again, we can all, I think at the moment, with the sort of climate in terms of recruitment and, very much a candidates market right now, lots of people are talking about, let's strengthen our brand. Well, first of all, it's about knowing who you are. And as Sarah and Sophie said, living out those behaviours, living out those values. And without that, you can have any fancy words that will make up an employer brand, but actually, again, agree with what they both said it's about action. You give your people a brilliant experience. It's so, that's the most important thing, actually living it, and then the talking about it will come later.
What I'm hearing there is that I think the lovely thing in marketing, it might not be the same as employee brand, but it's the brand is what's said about you when you're not in the room.
Yeah.
And so my guess is, from what you're saying there, Gemma, that people have also said, is that actually it's the employee experience and then what they say about you. So you can say we've got brand values on the wall, but if they're not being lived fully or at all, about, in classic 50% of FTSE 100 companies have integrity as their brand value, and yet half of them get done by the FSA, and half the banks are getting told because they're selling the wrong things. So it's about behaviours, isn't it, as well? And I reiterate the "don't be a dick" move from Sophie, which I think should be put on people's walls or maybe even tattooed to some people, myself included, by the way. I'm a reformed dick, so I just have to go. That's we said, I'm not very emotionally intelligent. That's why I put money into your flock, because I need the data to make myself a better team leader and a better manager. So that whole kind of employee brand, if it's things that have been said by things, I mean, how can you? I've got to again be careful with words, but what can we do which is real, which is a real quick, easy first step? And I know I've been naughty here and I've been a bit of a dick because I didn't have this question and I gave you loads of other questions, but I'm going to throw this one in anyway. What are some of the things that you can do really quickly now? Because you're all in agreement about what employee brand is. I'm going to throw that one to Sophie first. But again, proving I'm not emotionally intelligent, because I should have thrown it to Sarah first because of the body language. Damn it. Sorry, Sarah. I should have gone to you first. But Sophie, also Sarah, over to you. What are the quick wins?
Quick wins is a difficult one. My first thought was, what can you do is to get really honest with yourself about what your situation is right now. And that's not a quick win. That requires time and space and listen, and providing a space for people to share openly and honestly about their current experience. I think it's a huge mistake for business leaders to just rush in and try to put a plaster on it and just go, oh, I need a quick win, I'm going to do this for you. Because actually this is all about the experience of those who make up your organization, and they're the ones that need to be listened to and given the opportunity to share first. That's where I would always start with this.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that when you're saying about the sticking a plaster over it, for me, then it comes down to transparency. And actually it's the leaders in the business, because that's where it starts, is saying, we've not got this right, how do we get it right? And then listening to people, and not listening to people with an intention of responding how they think they can get it right, actually listening to people with the intention of taking some actions from people that are living and breathing in that organization. And then doing that shit, not actually just saying, oh, here we go, we've listened to you now and we're going to crack on down this monorail that we've been going on for 5, 10, 15, 25 years. It's then about making something different.
You're both all vigorously nodding. I love the fact this is a vigorous agreement. Brilliant. I love it when things like this happen. But I'm going to go for Gemma, not as though you're going to disagree, but I'm going to ask a slightly deeper question, which is, because I know you're very much hands-on and learning development and these other things as well, yeah, Gemma. So have you noticed any difference in the kind of post-pandemic kind of post-COVID, great resignation, great reset, great reshuffle, whatever term we can come up with, which is great with an R at the end of it, we seem to be coming up with. So have you seen the effect of this? And I suppose, knowing that, what the benefits of a great employee brand or an employer brand right now? Originally I was going to go for Sophie first, but I think Gemma, I'm going to come in with you, Gemma, because I know we chatted a bit offline about this as well. So I'm going to go to Gemma first.
Yeah, sure. I think that there is the difference now at the moment. I think if you think about it from an external, I'll talk about it from a recruitment perspective at the moment. One of the things that's happening right now is because there's such a need for talent and a seeming shortage of talent at the moment. One of the things that I've seen that I think is different before the pandemic is people saying they can offer the world. So I think back to what Sophie and Sarah were saying in terms of quick wins, honesty is key, and do what you say you're going to do and be honest about that. So if you can't deliver, be honest about what you can give to people and then do it. I think that's a really important thing. Because what's happening at the moment is, particularly for candidates, and I know this from being a recruiter, in some parts of my job, but also from people, who I'm hearing in our business who are trying to get tapped up by people. people are saying all sorts of things about how brilliant things are, and they're just not, and that's the reality. So I think for any business, a quick win really is, again, to Sarah's point, that honesty about what it is that you can deliver, and then deliver it. But then again, a word that I don't tend to like, to be honest, Dan, is being realistic. It's not a word that that really features in my vocabulary, but it's true. We have to be realistic about what we can achieve. And I think at the moment, the big difference from the before the pandemic is that it's a candidates and employees market at the moment. People have got a massive amount of choice right now. So looking after people should be the only reason you do things. And again, back to sort of the employer brand stuff, it should be around doing good stuff anyway, because it's the right thing to do. Look after your people first of all, not because you care necessarily about how it's going to look externally for your brand, but actually do it because it's the right thing to do. And then your people will be happy and it'll flow from there.
You see, I knew wisdom, I knew nuggets of gold and wisdom. I knew that would answer. And I think if I like link that a little bit into, and reminding myself that I did have notes for this, and going back to my own notes, sorry. But also, I think it's worth thinking. It's worth thinking about. So the who in this is key as well. We're all talking about action points and all these things. I mean, sometimes I certainly, as a consultant, and certainly using your flock, because it helps with team dynamics and it helps team leaders see what they need to do, and we're all about actions. Stuff you've got to do. So what your flock helps you do. But who's responsible for promoting employee branding? I'm going to go to that one to Sarah first, if that's okay. So who's responsible? Who's the who in the organisation?
Every single person in the organisation. Everyone. That was going to be the standard answer, I think, from everyone. I think who starts it? The leaders of the business, because it cascades down. But who's responsible for it? Every single person. You know, and I would like to see, not just when people go for a job and they've got, you know, here's your roles, here's your responsibilities. I would like to see within the onboarding process a code of conduct, and everyone signs a code of conduct that says this is how we're going to behave. And that's part of your appraisal system. That's part of your personal development within that business, because then people can then be held accountable for their code of conduct as much as they can be held accountable for whether they're good at the hard skills of the job. And therefore, what happens then, if your code of conduct is integrity, is honesty, is inclusivity, if you're deviating from that, then you can be pulled up for it. You know, you can be shown ways to improve it. You can be shown ways to move forward from it. But ultimately, you know, every single person needs to understand they've got a personal responsibility for that business to move it forward and for it to be a happier place.
Yeah.
And everyone again nodding, which is brilliant. If anyone wants to, so are we all in agreement that it should be everyone's response? I suppose as a boss as well. Again, Sophie, I'm going to let you, because you're doing the wonderful thing where you're telling me you want to speak. Thank you.
I agree, and kind of to further that, we have created or co-created a team charter, which is our internal communications, and also then is how we communicate with our clients, and how, because we've got a whole team of neurodiverse people, so therefore, and everyone with their own little shade of needs within that neurodiverse spectrum. And so that's where it became even more crucial to have that understanding, not just of how we are with one another, what our values are, and how we expect that to be lived through all of our communications and how we are with each other, but how we need each other to understand how we need to communicate with each other. And that, I think, is a really important part of it, because I've seen businesses try to find, you know, maybe you've Googled it and you've gone, oh, that's a great idea, and you've run with it, and then tried to make it apply to everybody. And that never works either. And giving the time to actually understand each individual person's needs, and making that a key part of the onboarding process, like you were saying, Sarah, and the review process, is such a fundamental way of embodying it in every single part of the organization.
And I think it's about saying what's not acceptable as well, isn't it? Because, you know, sometimes it's, you know, when we like to sprinkle the magic dust in any organisation, and this is what we do, and this is how we behave, and this is the impact we want to do. But I think it's also important to say, and this is not what we do, you know, and actually this is, you know, what's unacceptable, you know. So if you're going to stand around, you know, if you're talking about employees, if you're going to gossip, then positive gossip is scientifically proven to be absolutely brilliant for an organisation. Switch it the other way, you end up with a toxic environment.
Absolutely, and I think it's very famous John Amici, and I think he may have borrowed it from somebody else. I don't think John came up with it, but it's the he said the other day, the culture is often the thing that you allow to happen, the worst thing that you allow to happen, that becomes your company culture. And I thought that was a really, really, really strong point. It's actually the worst behavior that you allow to happen then tends to become the benchmark moment. And I think we've all, the reason why we built Your Flock is that both me and Michal and others have all been in toxic work environments, or been sold the dream of a company that you're going to work for, and then it be the exact opposite. Because we can all, we work in marketing crank now, we can all make up stuff and have great adverts and do whatever and say it's the best place to work in the world, and we have ping pong tables and all this other bullshit, for want of a better phrase. But of course, as I was just saying this morning on the podcast, those things happened organically in good company cultures. They are the visual bit that you see. They are not the 90% of the work that actually have people wanting to have lunch with each other and wanting to have crashes and being nice people. That's the hard bit. The hard bit's being nice for me. The hard bit's being nice and being loving and caring. And then you create a company culture that then reflects that. However, if you have one or two bad apples, then sometimes the culture can go back down again. But as I promised, I wasn't going to talk about it. This was just a segue into the brilliance of what Gemma was about to say. So I'll pass it on to Gemma.
Lost you there, Dan. Sorry, I completely lost all of that bit. Sorry, I just lip read Gemma, but I just lost the sound completely there. Sorry.
That's okay. So if everyone else can hear me as well, I hope everyone can. I was just giving you a filler in there, Gemma. I was about to say, and the great thing is we've got you here who could then say about company cultures and the good things that can be done to help your company culture. And I was going to then pass on the baton to you.
Yeah, sorry. I'm back with you now. Can everyone hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, look, I think culture isn't about can you get a table tennis table or a pool table. Culture is the small interactions that happen every day. It's the interactions between leaders are key in this. It's the interactions between leaders and the people. It's the interactions between, it's the respect. It's how you treat people. And I know, so we were talking before about everyone being responsible for it. I think everyone should be responsible and everyone should feel it as well. So one of the really, I'm Director of Culture and Learning at MAP, so I can talk all day long about how great the culture is. But if somebody in our admin team isn't feeling it, then we've got an issue. So it's about actually making sure that everyone feels it. And again, it's that point of action. Again, I think the word culture in itself can mean so many different things, and I think people can steal it from, let's look at what Google are doing, let's look what Facebook are doing. Actually, it's about being authentic to you. It's about those, for me, it's about moments that matter. It's those small interactions every day that make a positive difference. The people who are around you that are really, really important. And that to me is what culture is. It's the glue between the teams. It's those things that happen. It's the interactions. It's the celebrating the wins. It's the, Dan, we spoke last week about, it's being together. It's having that buzz, being around each other. So I think, there's a lot to be said about what, a lot is said about what culture actually is. But I think culture is found in those small, seemingly insignificant moments between people.
I love it. And I knew I'd get gold from these speakers. And, those moments that matter is something that, bizarrely enough, I was about to lie and say I said. You said it was brilliant, and I'm going to pretend that I said it. That's terrible, isn't it? No, I'll credit you when I write the blog. Gemma said, because it's just brilliant. But it's those micro moments that matter. And I used to talk about that with marketing. It's actually those moments that matter in between you and your customer are what marketing is and what your brand then becomes. But of course, it's the same with your people, isn't it? Because technically, I believe they're your first customer. But I work for a startup, a small startup, and so the people we pick and that we work with are almost our customers because we're so small. But obviously, as you get bigger, you might not feel that those moments, of course, and that could be problematical. But I suppose, and that's when your employee brand might become weakened. So that goes into my next question, which is for Sophie, which is about strengthening your employee brand, and where do you start? And I know Gemma's given us some brilliantness, and I know Sarah's going to chip in, and rightly so. So I'm going to leave, but I'm going to go with Sophie first on this. How do you strengthen your brand, especially especially for law firms? Because I know a lot of people on the call are from law firms, and that area is not always rich with great cultures, which is why some organisations are leading the way and are creating and collating more talent. So over to you, Sophie.
Again, I think that the key thing is to start with the people who are there and ask them, like, not to make any assumptions of what you think people want. Because I've seen Michael's written in the chat that law firms are increasing their salaries to get talent. And to link back to your point about COVID, like, that isn't the only thing people are looking for now. They've understood what is possible outside of the constructures of a traditional paradigm of working, which I actually think doesn't work for anybody. So it's about going, you know, what does work for you? For example, and I can only really speak for what we've done at the Joyful, we have people who have all kinds of needs in our team, mums as well. And we, you know, traditionally we were like, we've got flexible working because you can come in at any point between this time and this time. That's not flexible. That's not flexible. That's just like a tiny little bit of flexibility maybe here, and you're still running around trying to get to work. So we thought, okay, what will happen if we create 24 hours a day, 7 days a week flexibility with deadlines, because that's necessary. And what happens then? And I think that's, for me, that's how I've approached it, is to go like, what if we tried this? What if this was possible? And really looking at ways of reimagining how work can be. And I mean, I know that that's a very different thing for law firms, because you're working one-on-one with clients and you've got a lot more pressure and there's a lot more kind of need to be there and to have those kind of meetings and what have you. But asking people like, what really doesn't work and how could we maybe try something different that would make a huge difference to your life, even if it's not necessarily increasing your salary, I think that has such a huge impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go straight, like passing a ball straight to Sarah.
Yeah, completely agree. I think that it's not about the tick box exercises. I'm being great at telling you what it's not about today, isn't it? And I think that the challenge is, because what it is about is so individual to each of the companies that are involved. I think it comes down to strengthening it, comes down to looking at what that individual's company purpose is, why the hell they exist and what they're doing. And it actually, the answer to that question shouldn't really be just to make shitloads of money. It should be something else. And then from the purpose, obviously you've got your values, but then the key thing from a strengthening point of view is what are the behaviors that come from those values. So actually, if this is our behavior, and our value is all about transparency, well then what's the behavior that we expect? Well, and therefore how do we deal with it when someone is transparent with us? You know, if someone's telling us that this is going on in our lives or my life and this is how it's affecting me, if we're a transparent organization, how do we deal with that? How do we move it forward? How do we support that person? And I think once you can look at a set of behaviors, then you can then look at what the actions are. So for me, it's absolutely about action. The way you strengthen it is by consistent actions. I bloody love the small interactions every day. I've got on a necklace, moments make the memories, which is lovely. So it's about the action. That's it. Simple as that.
I feel like I should have had a tattoo done now for this thing. Maybe buy a t-shirt. I always going a bit too heavy there. That was a bit much as a tattoo. Calm down there. Just a t-shirt would have done exactly the same thing. I don't know. I'm just very excited by it. Gemma, over to you, because I know that there's lots of actions, and again, bringing it down to your Flock work. We work primarily with law firms, so we know this area very well. And we're very lucky that we work with people that have won awards because of culture, and there are certain things that they've done that have helped. And I think, you know, the helping of the culture is first, and that helps your employee brand, of course. But I don't know if you know this in law firms, Sophie and Sarah, but law is a particularly weird, odd sector, because it's known that lawyers will moan about the place they worked about more than anybody else in any of the sector. Worse than coders, worse than teachers, worse than anything. They are the worst for moaning about where they just left. However, the employee turnover in law firms is up to 44%. Yeah, so if you can imagine the mass churn that this is creating, and this is also why, by the way, the legal sector is losing talent. People are leaving in droves and not even coming back to law, you know. But that's a different point entirely. But I'm just bringing it into focus for law firms in particular, because we have Gemma on the call. So it's over to Gemma.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to Michelle's point there, in the chat box there about salary and law firms throwing money at people to retain talent and things like that. What we're seeing, I think, what I can see across the sort of legal landscape at the moment is people are throwing money around, that's for sure. First of all, I wonder how sustainable it is in some of the areas that are throwing money at it. So I think the most important thing is to have a viable business where everyone can still, remain in their roles. Of course, pay is important. But I'll just give you a very quick example of one of the teams in our business. We have got two parts to our business. One is legal aid and one is privately funded. So typically in legal aid, I'm sure you've seen all the stuff going around about crime with barristers going on strike and all the rest of it because fees haven't gone up in such a long time. The money that you can sort of bill as a crime lawyer is really small actually, and therefore the amount that you paid sort of struggles in that space too at times. Now our crime team is a team of about 13, 14 people. Attrition is 0. No one leaves that team. No one has left that team in the last 10 years, to my knowledge. They are working in a very difficult area of work where fees haven't gone up for a long time. Therefore, they have to work harder to hit their minimum requirements. So no one leaves there. They're also in different places at different times. So what is it that I can look for in that team that is a strong culture? First of all, an excellent leader. The leader of that team is absolutely phenomenal and spends time with people. She's also very real and she's open and transparent. Things that we talk about in terms of our culture, we operate first of all with kindness. Always, kindness always comes first. So it's easy to be kind in a good moment, isn't it? But actually, when the difficult moments happen, that's when kindness is even more important. And that's what we really think about. Think about a learning culture, a culture that everyone can come together and learn from experts in their field, from essential skills, well-being, all the rest of it. We have transparent communication. Again, that's not just about communicating when times are good. It's about coming out and speaking when times are bad and being really, really honest. And then again, back to the person I'm talking about, that supportive leadership. What I see in that team is complete trust. There's complete flexibility in the true sense of it, to your point there, Sophie. Complete flexibility. But again, I'll see them coming in from court, and whether it's been a good day or a bad day, they're together. And I think that's really important. So when people are looking, particularly in the law right now, the recruitment market is absolutely mad. It's the craziest I've ever seen it. There's so many jobs, not enough talent. But I think, again, that goes back to my first point about doing what you say you're going to do and having a really authentic culture that you can actually say, this is what it is. And again, all those things you talked about, kindness, learning culture, supportive leadership, transparent communication, those things are all key in retention. It's not just about salary. Again, salary always helps. But actually, again, to repeat, sorry, I keep repeating my points, but it's about those moments that matter. It's about those daily interactions and that relationship between the team as a unit and of leadership as well.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things is that we always look at the obvious stuff like wages first, and we always say, people leave because of wages. But you look at the data, and the data doesn't support that. It doesn't support that people leave because of money. In fact, over a certain amount of money that you make, as I'm sure, because you're all very clever people, that's why you're on the call. But we know that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and whether he stole it from someone else is a completely different conversation. But over a certain amount, I think it's now something like £48,000 for the average person. If you make, and by the way, that's double the average wage. So let's just be, take it onto the macro point, but we'll bring it micro. If you make that much money, you actually don't move for money. So I was on a podcast this morning and I was talking to a friend of mine who's actually leaving his job and going somewhere for less money, but he can get a lot more money because he's into coding, which is very similar to law in some respects. It's a crazy market at the moment. But people aren't looking for more money. They're looking for purpose, mastery, autonomy. The Great Resignation has proven that there's more to life than work, and they're looking for flexibility and asynchronous working. Now, this gentleman is taking at least a 10% cut in wages, but he knows that he doesn't care about taking a 10% cut in wages because he knows life-work balance is more important. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that everyone's like that, and I'm not saying that they are. I mean, I am. I'm a bit weird, but I run my own business. And I suppose when you run your own business, you are a bit of an outliner. But I keep hearing from recruiters that, and from the data, that money isn't as much of a driver that it used to be. And I suppose that doesn't really link into it, but I suppose it does, because if you move jobs and you move to jobs because you wanted to work in a nicer place, that's about company culture, isn't it? And if you knew about that company culture, that surely must be the employee brand, because that brand has got to you first. Yeah, they haven't had to persuade you with an advert. You've heard it's a good place to work. Now, whether you believe Glassdoor or all these other things is a different point again. But I'm going to go to Sarah on this one. So who in your mind, and it doesn't have to be in law, Big shout out to IMD solicitors, by the way, because we know you won awards and you use your flock. Also a big shout out to Gemma's company, but there you go, that's a different thing. Because I know you're lovely. So I'm going to go for Sarah. So who's got a great employee brand at the moment? Not necessarily just in this sector. I'm going to broaden it out, but it would be great if you have one for this sector. Over to you, Sarah.
I definitely don't have one for this sector. So, everyone bring their aspirations down for what they're actually expecting from me. Personal brand realism. One thing I would just quickly on your point before is that one of the things about the employee brand that you're talking about and everyone leaving is it's also about the people that do leave because they are moving, what taste in the mouth they've got when they leave, and therefore how they're moving forward and what they're talking about, because that I think is how an employee brand really then starts to amplify. People that are doing a great job out there. I was just looking actually on various things, and I was asking various contacts who they thought, and came across a guy called Gareth Waterhouse who works for ASOS. And if you go and have a look at his LinkedIn, he's going to have suddenly all these people looking at him now. He does some great things because he's personable, but he's also doing things like top tips to help you write your CV. So he's gifting people the knowledge of saying, you're not necessarily going to come to us, but this is how you can make yourself better. But actually, because he's gifting that knowledge, people are going to want to work with him more. It's what he's doing. He's, I was talking yesterday in something I was doing about an employer, about personal brand and brand and culture. And actually, you've got to give forward without any expectation of anything in return, and he does that very well. So that would be one of the ones that I would say is doing a great job out there.
Oh, awesome. I'm going to go to Sophie next, because I know that you'll have some in particular brands that you've helped or that you think have got particularly strong employee brand.
Well, every single one of my clients has got an amazing brand, but
in particular.
But I'm not gonna talk about any of the ones I've worked with. Sadly, I've not had the opportunity to work with them. I'm going to talk about Patagonia, because Patagonia are a brand that I personally find inspiring in many, many ways. There are so many businesses who I truly believe are doing the best they can. And when you peek beneath the surface, the best isn't quite good enough. Patagonia for a long time have been very inspirational as a brand that actually walks their talk. And in terms of a US-based business, I don't think it's a secret that the US is horrific for all of the things that we've been speaking about, even when they have beanbags and pool tables, and they're called Facebook. And Patagonia have like one of the highest employee happiness ratings, and they look after their employees really well. And I love the fact that they're not just focusing on being an impactful brand out there in the world, which they do amazingly, but they're in impactful brand inside and out.
I'm a massive fan of theirs as well, because I started THCC, the hemp trading company, so I know them very, very well, and then Howard and other people. But that also makes me smile that the VC community know Patagonia particularly well. It's become like a badge of honor to wear one of their vests. And I love the fact they recycle. They did this other thing where you can. Oh, anyway, I love the brand too. I'll leave it there. Gemma, have you got any ones potentially not necessarily from the legal sector, but any that instantly come to mind that were doing really strong employee brands?
Yeah, a couple really. I think Social Chain. So anything that Steve Bartlett does really. I think I've sort of watched Social Chain from the early days, and I've always been quite inspired by the things that they do. What I particularly like about them is that as people are leaving, and lots of people have left from the original people who went there, they all talk about it in such a positive way, and they're all still friends. They've started new companies together. So again, I think I'm a big fan of the strength in relationships, and I think that sort of shines through there. And again, I just think they're sort of innovative and try and do things a little bit differently in terms of the happiness or the engagement or culture space too. So I'm a big fan of them. Again, I'm a big fan of Steve Bartlett and the things that he does. I don't, in terms of law firms, I don't know that many. I think lots of law firms they say they put effort into it. I don't know if they necessarily do. I think again, it's very easy to put sort of values on the wall. It's very different when you're living it out. So, again, I'm going to say we're great at it. Of course we are. But again, but for me, some of the feedback that we're getting, and again, I think in terms of strength of employer brand, one of the really interesting things for me is looking at attrition, but also looking at who comes back. So we've had, again, because of the Great Resignation, we had a lot of people leave. The same people returned. Our record was someone came back after half a day and said they've made a massive mistake. Again, the point that I made before, the company that they went to had promised the moon on a stick, didn't deliver as soon as they got there. Straight away, you know, that's not what's going to happen here. So again, I think there's people will leave, and I think as long as you've made a difference to them on their journey while you're with them, that's fine. So attrition in itself isn't a massive problem, but actually it's when people come back and what they say when they come back, that's really key for me. So one of the things that I've been really proud of when we sort of monitor our new joiner journey and also our returners is that people are saying to us, yeah, it's exactly how I said it would be. It's exactly how I said it would feel. So again, I think I'll just give us a little shout out there.
No, rightly so. If you're using data to make sure you're more authentic and it's on point, I think you've got every right to shout out. Also, if you've got people that are returning to you, it's I not always use the analogy of partnerships, but yeah, it's very rare that people go back, isn't it? So the fact that people do is testimony to your company and to the company culture, I'd imagine. I love the fact you did a shout out to Social Chain, and they have been testing and use your flock. Also, Katie Leeson is now no longer with Social Chain, but she's also on our board. So we are a huge fan of Social Chain and their organisation, but also not because of the Your Flock connection, but because of what they did and actually the company culture they grew was another thing. And then your point as well, which I absolutely love, is you can tell about employee brand, I think, when people leave and what they say when they leave, and if they are supported in the move. Now, I've seen a couple of bits, which I absolutely love, and I don't know Gymshark as a place to work, so I don't know if there's any data to this, but you look at how many people have left and the way they've left, and the fact they're always saying, thank you, it's been amazing, you know, but I'm now going to go on to my next thing. And then everyone chips in and says, oh, we love working with you, it's been great, good luck with your next thing. Now that to me looks like a very powerful employee brand. There's also a couple of other ones in the tech community, like places like Buffer and other places, but they managed to do it because they do things like they're remote first rather than remote forced. But also they have the capacity to do things that perhaps would be unheard of in law firms, which is go pretty much fully remote, but then also bring people together in things like company retreats, and then but take people around the world and things like that. And I'm not saying there's the budget for that in the law sector, but if you're saving thousands of pounds on people not leaving, or hundreds of thousands of pounds on people not leaving, thousands of pounds on people going remote and then the office space, then that money surely should be ploughed back into your employee brand and your company culture. It's not just profits, but I don't run a law firm, so I don't know one. We've had a question, which is a really good question, which is coming about remote work. Yeah, so I'm gonna change what I was going to talk about. But I'll still talk about that, but we don't have long. So with the remote work thing happening, my question to all of you is, does that change how you can create a culture? Yeah, because of remote and hybrid work. And are you finding with any of your clients or with your own companies that it makes it harder to have these meaningful moments and interactions? It's spurred on from Gemma's genius before, to be fair. So that's the question. The question is, does remote work and hybrid work make this bit harder? To Sarah first. Sorry, this was not on the sheets. I was went for it. Sorry, Sarah.
Yes, I think it can do. And I think that it can make it harder. Going back to what Sophie was saying about flexibility, actually, it depends on the stage of life that you're at. And I think it depends on if you're, for me, I've had my own business for 20 odd years, so I'm used to working in the house and I'm used to working remote working. And actually, the biggest pain in the arse for COVID for me was when every other bugger came in and started working in my house and I could actually hear them all. I was like, could you all leave, please, and leave me alone? But I think one of the biggest challenges for remote working and therefore for the employee brand is when new recruits come on board. And I think it's when new recruits come on board, and also when you're looking at that graduate level and the early career level, because I think once you've got into your way of work and once you've got used to how you deal and how you interact with people and what your day-to-day routines and life are and what those moments, those small interactions are, then that's an easier journey to move forward on. I think when you're new into the world of work, actually, if your first experience is a load of people working on Teams or with computers, it doesn't matter what you say that culture is or what you say that employee brand is. It's quite difficult to live and breathe that remotely.
Well, that is really one of the things. I think they also find this with law firms with entry-level bits. So I think that's going to resonate very much with people on the call. I'm going to go to Sophie next, but that's because I can see you nodding.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And actually, we had an experience where we had a very junior person starting and remote working in the middle of the pandemic, and remote working really didn't work for her, and her mental health really suffered as a result of it. And that was a very, very challenging experience. And for me personally, it works well, but similarly to you, Sarah, I've been doing this for a long time and I'm used to it. But again, it depends. I think that's where we need to start being very innovative about how we go about it. And for creative businesses such as The Joyful, we can do things like that. We can say, okay, we're a remote team, but this is how we're going to come together and work together. These are the ways we're going to put reasonable adjustments in place. This is how we're going to check in and make sure you have everything that you need to be well, whether that's physically or mentally. That doesn't work for every single industry though. So again, it's such a nuanced situation, and it depends totally on what your situation is.
And I think that's brilliant. And we've got well, I love this question. Thank you, Hannah, for it. When there are quite a few people leaving, how do you keep a positive culture around the office? Now, that is the crux of all this bad boy put together into one beautiful moment. So I'm not going to go to anybody first because it's so big. But what I will do is I'll pause a bit so we can all register how great that question is. But it also gives you just a couple more seconds to think of an amazing answer. Because we've only got 7 more minutes. And so my thought was, I'll most probably keep talking for at least another 10 seconds. But at the end of that, I'm going to pass over to Gemma, who's going to potentially answer, when there are quite a few people leaving, how do you keep a positive culture around the office?
Well, I think the first thing is people leaving with dignity. I think people leaving doesn't always have to be a bad thing. So I think now it's very different. Sort of generation before, perhaps my generation might have been, you have a job for life or whatever, things like that. Sometimes you might have people who are with you for a year and it's an absolutely brilliant year and they have a great time and they do brilliant things for you and then they leave. But I think first of all, it's around reframing what leaving actually means. I think attrition isn't always a bad thing. People leave to move on to better things. And again, I think it's our responsibility as employers to make sure that our people have got right amount of skills, they're looked after well enough to be able, if there's not an opportunity in our business for them, go and fly somewhere else and amazing and then maybe come back. So I think first of all, people leaving isn't always a bad thing for them or for the business, and that's the first point that I'll make. Secondly, I think it's easy to be reactive to these things and to think, right, we're going to change everything that we're doing because we've had 4 people leave this week. Well, actually, sometimes carrying on doing the good stuff that you're doing, knowing that you're doing it for the right reason is a good thing. And I think, again, I think changing the conversations, carry on, running the good stuff, but also listening. If people are leaving, and I think exit is really important, and again, leaving with dignity is really important. Listen to what they're saying. If there are changes that can be made, let's change. Let's not be closed to things, let's be precious about it. Let's actually listen to what they're saying and act on it if we need to. But again, I think for me, I think it's very easy if you do have sort of high attrition. It's quite easy to be reactive to it. Mm-hmm. I think again, listening is key. But I also think again, platforms like Your Flock, you're actually listening to what your people are saying. You're listening to what kind of what is important to them. I think that's really important. And then to continue doing the good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, obviously to reiterate, of course, please do use Your Flock, but use other things as well. So Your Flock is particularly powerful because it links into values and does that kind of cool and funky stuff and gives you a little map, and it helps with teams, especially team dynamics is really important. I think you mentioned before about the differences in different teams, and you could have certain teams where people just don't lead because they have an amazing leader and that has an amazing culture. But the rest of your teams might have bad cultures. So I think it's worth looking from a team point, like look at it per team, look at individuals, look at the team. But again, that was just me filling in before Sarah was about to come in and have her thoughts on it as well. So Sarah, over to you.
Okay, well, I think it goes back to my original point, which is basically every single person in that business has a personal responsibility to move that employee brand, that culture, that environment for it to be the best possible place it can be. And that's about education, it's about training, and it's about constant conversations. And I think that it's really hard when some people leave. And I think what we do as humans, and especially in this world of positive work that we all try and promote, is that sometimes we try and stop the negative conversations of, well, that person's left because of this or this and this. And sometimes we can't give all the information as to why someone's left, of course. But I think what's really important is to have those conversations, because back to what Gemma was saying, is people just want to be heard, so sometimes it's just about saying, okay, we understand this is difficult and this is how we're moving forward, but we've all got a personal responsibility to move it forward. Now, of course, it's very easy for me to sit here and say that. It's again based on the actions, but we shouldn't always avoid the more negative conversations that are going to give us some information and evidence to move forward.
So what I'm hearing there is that the feedback bit's key, and even if it's feedback that you don't want to hear, it's better than not hearing it at all. Certainly from a point, really from your flock point of view as well. I think we hear from lots of clients about the stuff they collect at the exit interviews, and I always kind of gently say, but that might be a bit too late. But also people sometimes lie in exit interviews and say, oh no, I left because of the money, but they didn't. They left actually because they didn't like their boss, but they don't want to say it. So I think we've got to be sometimes careful with exit interviews because they don't necessarily give us the feedback we need. But what the feedback we do need is on time. It's only 2 minutes to go, which is why I'm going to leave this wonderful last bit for Sophie to sum up with all her genius. How do you keep a positive culture while people are leaving, especially around the office, even if we don't use offices as much as we used to? Sophie.
Really very, very similarly to what Sarah and Gemma have already shared. I think authenticity is the most important thing, and not trying to silence the negativity, not being afraid of the negativity. Actually, sometimes negativity just needs to be seen and witnessed, and then there's an opportunity to learn, to grow from that. And I do think it's a very British thing, we're very afraid, I think, sometimes of emotion, but emotion is a very natural thing for human beings to experience. And even if the reasons people left isn't a bad reason, it might still cause a negative emotion within the team, because it's sad when people leave and you've been working with them for a long time. So just creating a space for people to share that and listen and respond, and as Sarah said many times today, take action on what you hear, I think that's a really great place to start.
I think that is not only just a great place to start, but also, even though I'd love to talk about it forever with you three, but I really would, well, certainly for at least another hour or so, I'd change my whole diary just to listen to you, which of course I did today, which is why I'm very proud of hosting it with all of you. Just huge thanks to everybody who's on the call, but also these three amazing people that have come and joined us for this hour. And if you listened and you haven't learned at least 4 or 5 things, I work in this industry, and we have a tech company that helps people with team dynamics and things. I've learned 3 or 4 things, so that's just been awesome. So huge thanks to Gemma, huge thanks to Sophie, huge thanks to Sarah, huge thanks to your flock for the time to do it as well. What we'll also do, if you want to have a chat with Michal and other folk, please do. He's now looking after his Raf, baby, who just got chicken pox. See, all-inclusive, diversity, inclusion, your flock, lovely place to live, lovely place to work. Of course it is. We practice what we preach. We know our values, and one of our values is caring. And so therefore you have to have the behaviours as well as just the values. There you go. I was listening. I loved everything you guys were saying. I think that's brilliant. So huge thanks to the speakers, and massive thanks to everyone on the call as well. Please have a look at what your flock and things. We'll do some chopping up and some editing, and we'll send it out on social media as well. You'll also get a recording of it. I've just, as I say, 2 o'clock, but huge thanks to Sarah, Sophie, and Gemma. Please stay in touch. Go and talk to them on LinkedIn as well. Hire them. Do what you can. Try not to nick them for your own business. So they work for businesses themselves. Go and hire them.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Cheers now.
Thanks everyone. Bye bye.